Okay. Yes, I know. It's been almost 2 months, because I think my last video was on the September 2nd, and, now we're in October 23rd. So, yep. We are long overdue for another video. And yeah, I don't really have any... Unfortunately, I don't really have any updates. Nothing has really got accomplished ever since my last video. But I will talk a little bit of... If I still have time, I will talk a little bit about my hopes for these next few months. But first, before we get into that, I really need to get some stuff off my chest, because I've honestly been kind of stressed out lately, especially, this past week and a half. So, and I want to talk about that. Sorry if you can't really hear it. I'll turn it up if there's something I want to show the volume on, but I actually like to keep the volume kind of low so, it doesn't drown out my voice. But yeah. I was actually planning this particular vent. Let me see if my mod still works. At least my outing ticket mod. But yeah. Remember how I kept saying how I was gonna vent about the situation with my grandparents and their dog? Well, now I'm finally going to, because my grandparents actually went on a vacation. A pretty big one, in fact. Not as major as the cruise, but it was an international vacation. And they were, and they've been gone for a week and a half. Thankfully, they're coming back Thursday morning, and they're gonna pick up the dog. Good fucking riddance. But yeah, they left last week on Monday. I never really got around to doing this rant, because I didn't really have a reason to. I wanted to save it for a time where they took an extended vacation. And thankfully, they didn't take as many vacations this year as they did last year. I mean, my grandma was dealing with some stuff. She had back in February, she had problems with one of her eyes. And then, she got shingles in June. And then I think she got something else back in September. I think she had strep throat or something. And yeah, it does suck that she got sick. I do feel bad, but it kept her and, my grandfather from being from being reckless with their vacation taken. They toned it down compared to. last year. Last year it was bad. Not only did they go on that cruise that lasted 3 weeks, yeah, it was a European cruise too. At least Mexico, that's just across the border, the southern border of the United States. And that only lasted a week and a half. But, the European cruise, that's across the prime meridian. That's on, we're in the western hemisphere and, Europe is in the eastern hemisphere. I probably should have given it to Rupert, but Orkia's almost done leveling up. So yeah, that one was definitely the brunt of their vacations in the last couple of years. But yeah, and I've discussed before the reasons why I do not like it when they take vacations. And it's because of their dog. You see, their dog has separation anxiety, so when he's over here, he's miserable, and then he makes me miserable. Because number one, he's always in the way. Like if I try to step out of my room, he always has to lie in the hallway. And and what am I supposed to do? He can't understand me, first of all, because he's a dog. And second of all, he's going deaf. So the only thing I have to do is literally kind of, not kick him, but to kind of poke him with my foot. So he'll get out of the way. And then, it's annoying, too, when I'm trying to cook, because he always has to roam the kitchen and, be in the way when I'm trying to cook. Because he's a very gluttonous dog. He's always waiting. He's on someone to, give him a treat or to see if he's going to get food. So yeah, it's annoying. And of course, and then, it's hard for me to, a lot of the times when he's over here, I don't sleep very good when he's over, because at our house. Because number one, a lot of times he'll just bark, sometimes for extended periods of time. Different colored hearts. Yeah. I talked about that before, but basically, I don't want to get too far off topic, but to cut a long story short, Purple Ethan freaked out all because I didn't react with the heart color I usually did. Or no, actually, I was pretending to be Ashton, because we were pretending to be each other. And I reacted with a pink heart, because that's what I'm used to. And he thought I was Ashton, so he was like, "Oh my god, Ashton! Why would you react with a different colored heart? Your color is blue!" But yeah, that's basically the context of his war cry. But back to the topic of my grandparents' dog. He sometimes, it's hard to sleep because a lot of the times he'll bark when I'm trying to sleep. So, it's hard for me to get a full night's sleep a lot of times when he's over here, or a good night's sleep. And sometimes my brother leaves his door open. Now when he's like asleep, that doesn't matter, but a lot of the times he'll be raging with his friends on Discord and, the games they play together. And it's annoying because sometimes I'll be trying to sleep, but I can't. Because he's raging, and all of a sudden, and sometimes it'll go quiet for a couple minutes, then all of a sudden he'll, freak out about something. So yeah, that's another thing that contributes to my, shitty sleep when the dog is over here, is my brother leaves his door open. And, even with my door closed, it doesn't muffle the noise as good as, both of us had our doors closed. You know what I mean? Oh, okay, good. I can finally give this to Rupert. I forgot to in the last episode, but... oh well. Better late than never. Alright, treasure chest time. But yeah, that's all. Like I said, that's also another factor that contributes to lack of sleep or damaged sleep. Because I'm a light sleeper too, so if I'm asleep and the dog starts barking, or my brother gets online and starts, yelling or, talking loudly to his friends, that shit will wake me up. Alright, got another gown. I'm gonna keep this one though. But it's nice to still have the status points. And yeah. Now, my dad did install an air conditioning filter in my room. The main reason he did that is to reduce the dust that gets collected on my desk. It still collects dust, but not as bad. But the other use for it is to drown out noise. Now, it does a pretty good job of drowning out noise, if, the dog's not over here and my brother doesn't have to keep his door open. Oh my god, no. Okay. Alright. Alright, you know what? I'm gonna put Ethan. Should I put Ethan or me in the safe spot? I'll put me in a safe spot because I I have the highest status points. Oh my god, I only did 7. Hold on, I'll get back to the topic. I just really want to focus on defeating this fucker. Oh! Yeah. Oh, Resurgence. I thought he was gonna avenge. Oh well. Okay, now I'm a bit concerned because I don't use a controller anymore. Because when I got my Switch 2, my dad just had me connected back, connect my controller to it. So, yeah, these next the harder battles later on, especially the Tower of Despair, they are going to take some getting used to, but hopefully we can manage. Oh my god. Okay, good. There we freaking go. There we freaking go. But we got it, good. But yeah, the filter, it does a pretty good job of drowning out noise, but when the dog's not over here and my brother can keep his door closed, because it helps to muffle a lot of his screaming and yelling and loud talking. Because, he tends to talk very loud a lot of the times to his friends. I don't know, I talk loud sometimes. I guess it just runs in the family. My dad talks loud, my brother talks loud, even I talk loud. I don't know, I guess it's a genetic thing, I don't know. But, it does a pretty good job of muffling, of drowning it out, like I said, when my brother can keep his door closed. But when he has to keep his door open, it doesn't do as good of a job because there isn't as much, because, I'm the only one that keeps my door closed when Zach is over here. Sometimes my dad will shut it, if he, in the weekend mornings when Zach is over here, and my brother is asleep, but when my brother is awake and my dad is asleep, or or at work when if my dad's asleep or at work, and then my brother is awake and playing with his friends, yeah, it doesn't do as good of a job because there's not as much to muffle out the noise because I keep my door closed. I'm the only one that keeps my door closed, and since he keeps his open, then yeah, it doesn't help as much when he has to be over here. Now you're probably asking, why does my brother have to keep his door open when the dog is over here? Can't he just keep it closed and then when the dog barks, he can just let him out or do whatever Zach, That's the name of the dog. Do whatever the dog needs. Well, I've talked about it before. And the dog has severe separation anxiety. And that's one of the main reasons why he's a pain in the ass compared to, most dogs. I'm not much of a dog person in general, but, some dogs, they're they're a lot more chill and low maintenance than Zach. Like I said, my grandparents' dog. Even if I ideally I want nothing to do with him in general, but Zach is on a whole new level thanks to his separation anxiety. So he always has to be around someone, and that's why he is always, laying next to the doorway, because he knows my brother is there. I keep my door closed, even when Zach's not here, I keep my door closed most of the time, because it's just weird having it open. Unless I need to listen for something, or I'm about to come go out of my room or come out of my room for something. But he relies on my dad and my brother a lot, and he knows like I said, my brother keeps his door open when he's here, so he lays next to him. Laying next to both of our doors, so he's in the way when I need to get out. Ooh, nice. But yeah. And I've talked about it before. Going on vacations when you have a freaking dog with separation anxiety. I'm sorry, but it's a bit irresponsible. Yes, I am. I know some people really like their vacations and stuff. We'll go for the gold first. I need that money. That moolah. But yeah, because if you have a dog with separation anxiety, and then you have to constantly uproot him from his, or his or her, what's the word? I don't know if natural habitat is the right word, but from its and away from its owners, that dog is going to be miserable as hell. And then it's going to make people, miserable as hell too. Especially, people like me who don't like dogs. Hold on. Pound the wood a day, pound the wood a day, pound the wood a day. Okay, good, we got some cheesecake. Awesome! Sorry. I was watching my dad play Mario Galaxy 2 earlier, and he got to the Bowser area in the second world, and oh my gosh, that music is just so catchy. Seriously, you don't like cheesecake? Alright. But yeah, it's just, it's just irresponsible in my opinion. Adopting a dog with separation anxiety, and then you constantly go on all these vacations and keep having to drop him off. Sure, he might be familiar with us, but he's still better off with his not grandparents, well, my grandparents, but his, actual owners. And I understand that they wanted to help the dog. I may not like dogs, but at the same time, I understand wanting to, get him out of that situation. But taking in a dog, on a whim, you should not do that. There are certain factors to consider. Before, adopting or taking in any pet, let alone one with separation anxiety. If they knew they were going to be doing a lot of, well, I don't really know, if they were traveling a lot, back then. Because they're retired now. I don't know when they retired exactly. I don't know if they were still working. Because that would be the only logical explanation. Maybe they weren't traveling as much back then, and they didn't know they were going to be doing it a lot. Otherwise, yeah. It was not a good idea for them to adopt a dog with separation anxiety. He should have gone to a family or an owner or a couple or whatever, who was going to be more available for him. Ooh, okay, good. Yes, more horse attacks. Okay, good. Now we just have to deal with these the goblins. Yeah, Rupert is still underpowered compared to the rest of us, so it's gonna take him a while to build his strength. Oh, bluster. Okay, good. That'll help. But yeah, this whole situation is just very crappy, for lack of better words. Like I said, I understand if, back then, they weren't traveling as much as they did now. And, I'll cut them some slack and say, you can't really see, the dog is like 14 years old, almost, maybe even 15 or 16 years old. You can't see 15 years into the future. So I will cut them some slack because, because maybe they didn't travel back then as much and they didn't know they were going to be going to travel. But still, they should still, take the dog's needs into consideration. The dog needs to be with their own. A dog with separation anxiety needs to be with its owners. I understand if there's there's going to be times where a dog can't be with its owner. That's a part of that happens. People have work. They gotta people have work. They have to go to the store and they have things that they gotta do. That's understandable, but a dog with separation anxiety needs to be with its owner as much as possible, because it's not like you can you can just get the dog used to being alone. That's gonna make it miserable, and I know my grandparents would not do that to Zach anyway. But I wish, they were more considerate of not just my needs, but also the dog's needs. I don't like him, but they still need to be considerate about his needs. Oh, did that just take out all his MP? Yeah, these hobgoblins are no joke. Especially because Rupert is still underpowered. If only there was like a prince. Since there's like a princess, it would be awesome if there was a prince. Because there's 2 different pop star variations. So it would be cute if there was like a prince as well as a princess. I remember Ashton brought that up a while back, and I thought it was a good idea. But yeah. That's why I wish my grandparents would hold off on traveling until the dog passes away. And yeah, I get it. It's gonna. I know, like, some people really get attached to their pets, and it's hard for them to lose them, but. Mm, it's. I just feel like it's gonna make things so much easier when the dog passes away. I'm sorry if that sounds harsh or selfish, but they don't have to bring him over all the time when they go on vacations or even going on monthly trips, which they couldn't even do that because of my grandma having health problems. I mean, they still did it, but not every month of this year. Because, it's not just, people who don't like dogs that, have to be miserable. It makes the dog itself miserable, too. If you're going to be someone who likes to travel and likes going on vacations, I mean, that was redundant. I mean, someone who likes to, travel and someone who, wants a pet, then it's much better to get like a low maintenance pet. Cats are generally more low maintenance than dogs are, but there are some low maintenance dog breeds out there too that, if you're more of a dog person who likes to travel, you could either take the dog with you if, you're wherever you're staying that allows dogs, or you can just leave him or her at home with enough food and a doggy door. That way, if you're only, away, you can just, for example, you can just put enough food in the feeder so you don't have to worry about, manually feeding your dog, every time. And then if you have a doggy door, the dog doesn't have to go to, the dog can just go out and go to the bathroom on its own. So with the right tools, you can leave your dog at home for if it's only a week or less while you go on vacation. If you're not able to take your dog with you, and if the dog is low maintenance. But nope. People have to make rash decisions and adopt high maintenance dogs, even if it doesn't correspond to their lifestyle. If you're gonna adopt a dog with separation anxiety, it's best for, it's good, to do it if you're a homebody, or if, you have, people with, varying schedules. I don't know, let's say someone has, a night shift and someone has the day shift. Two people, they both have jobs, but they work different shifts. But that means at least one person will always be with the dog. Situations like that, it's fine to adopt a dog or to take in a dog with separation anxiety or that is otherwise more high maintenance. But if you're someone who likes to travel and you like to travel with your significant other, roommate, whatever, then no. Either get a low maintenance pet or dog, or just don't get a pet at all. I like perfume. I love perfume in real life. Aw, does Zorgia have a little girl crush on me? These Miis, man. And unfortunately, even when my my grandparents' dog does pass away, I'm not gonna be out of the clear, unfortunately. Because unfortunately, my dad has been looking into getting a dog after he does pass away. Hold on. Okay, good. I always get so nervous when they're about to buy stuff, because you know how these Miis can be sometimes. But yeah, my dad has been on and off about getting a dog for years now, but unfortunately, he seems really strongly about it at the moment. And he plans to get one, probably not too long after my grandparents' dog passes away. And like I said, he's been on and off about it for years now. In fact, I think I've also talked about it in, previous Tomodachi Life Let's Play episodes. In fact, I remember talking about it in one episode. I think it was a December 2022 episode. I was talking about it. And then I was talking about how I was excited to get my own place. Because, I'm not ready for it yet. Doing it on a whim, that's never a good idea. I have to make sure I'm, emotionally and financially prepared, and I'm able to do, a lot of stuff I need to. And if necessary, I can always hire, a maid occasionally to help with stuff, because I am going to need help, and I mean this in the most innocent way possible, but I'm not always going to have my dad around, and, I don't always want to have to rely on him or my brother to do everything, so yeah. Oh no. No! No! Oh. Come on, Rupert is still underpowered. Oh my god. Okay, good. We need the horse. Activate as much as you can, dear horse. Ooh, okay, we're gonna use Sharpened Claws. Oh my god. Thank you. Oh my god. Oh, he's still good. I was worried I would fuck up the sharpened claws. Alright, attack. Bluster. At least it still lets you attack. It doesn't just skip a turn or put on auto battle. But yeah, you know, there's gonna be some things that I'm just not gonna be able to do. And the main thing is driving. It's probably too early, but I've already been looking into like ways to get around, and you know, I'm still not sure yet. That's the main thing I'm really worried about, and I want to figure out my best, you know, method of transportation, because that's the main thing I'm worried about. Because there are some things I can eventually learn on my own, like, you know, doing like, you know, laundry, cooking some more meals and stuff. I can eventually do that, but driving, yeah, that's the one thing I'm worried about. And like I said, I can hire a maid for extra help around the house. But yeah, I'm getting a bit off topic, I know, but I'm just saying this because, you know, I want to eventually get my own place. That way, I won't have to worry about my dad having a dog. You know, I can finally be pet free for good. And there have been some times in my life that I have been pet free, but it's been on and off. You know, most of my childhood, you know, I have been living with, if not all of my childhood, I have been living with dogs, and even cats. We've even had some cats before, but mostly dogs. Ooh, good. Cat's paw. 48. There we go. Oh, come on. You have 41 friendship, I think. 42. Good. The ticket was working. Oh my god. You guys drain MP and HP so quickly. But yeah, in April 17th, you know, we were dog free for a while because our chocolate lab, Shelly, you know, first of all, she was getting old, and second of all, she got breast cancer. And then, you know, we were pet free for a couple of years, and then we lived with my uncles for a while, you know, from June 2019 to June 2020. We had Zoe, or, you know, he had his dog Zoe, but she passed away like in February or March of 2020 because she got cancer. And then, you know, we've been dog free for a while until the whole Zach situation started. Then, you know, we're on and off with him. But unfortunately, like I said, my dad's planning on getting a dog. So there have been some times in my life that I have dealt with constant peace of not having a dog, but unfortunately, I won't be able to do it for good until, I move out. My dad and I actually had a discussion pertaining to that back in September. A lot of the times, a lot of times he would bring up, oh, I'm gonna inherit my grandparents' house and you can live with me there. And yeah, having a pool that I can choose to swim in, during the warmer months, that's nice and all, but I also want to eventually get my own place and later on down the road when I am able to. Because me and my dad, we're just different people. We clash severely a lot of times. And, back in September, he finally admitted that I will probably eventually have to live somewhere else. And, later on down the road. Especially, when he gets old. He talked about. Ooh, okay. I will turn up the volume for a little bit because I love her theme. I can't really hear it. Okay, there we go. I pulled my speakers, so I can't really hear my volume. But yeah, I love her theme so much. My favorite themes in this game, my top 3 favorite themes in this game are this one, that one area where, when Mies get, when it shows, after, a trio, the 3 Mies get kidnapped, it takes them to that place. It shows it after the Greenhorn chapter and after the Next Door chapter. When the Next Door Mies meet up with the Greenhorn Mies in that area. I like the music, that place plays. And of course, Green Ethan, I know you're going to agree with me, Manor Macabre. Oh my god, that music eats. That music slaps. But I also love the Troubled Town music, that I think it's officially called. Where, you're walking in Greenhorn or Next Door or Realm of the Fae, and then, the Mies are missing their faces, and then it plays that ominous music. I also like that one. So yeah, top 4. I don't know what my top 5 will be, but that's my top 4. Wanda's theme, Manor Macabre, that kidnap area, I don't know what that music's called, and the Troubled Town music. But yeah. Another thing I wanted to vent about. I don't really have much else to say about the dog vent, but another vent that I've had on my mind for, I don't know, these past couple of days to about a week now. My mom. Yeah, I know. That's not new either. But she sent me a friend request on Facebook. I don't even really use Facebook very much. I just use it, for, mobile games and stuff. Because you can add friends on Facebook to help you with certain mobile games, including Criminal Case. So the main reason I use Facebook. I don't really use it to interact with people. I use it for gaming purposes. I don't know, but I do want to eventually see if I can reconnect with, old friends again. But I just don't really have much going on. Once I get into my programs, once stuff finally starts happening in my life, I might consider making it, but I don't know, because I know my mom's going to want to follow me, and I just don't want to deal with her on Facebook. She's gotten on my ass before. I don't even know how she found me. Like, were they recommended to her? Did she decide to just look me up? I don't know. I mean, I don't want to be that person that says she's too old for Facebook. Facebook's for all ages, but it's just very unnerving to have parents on social media. If she can talk to me, via text over the phone, I don't really like to worry about her on Facebook, because she has gone on my ass before for doing certain things on Facebook, and I just don't want to deal with that. Like I said, I do want to I am kind of considering okay, good. Woo. Thank you for not fucking up. But yeah, I just don't want to have to worry about her on Facebook. And that's one of the reasons why I'm skeptical about creating like an account. Because I mean, I'll still use like an account for gaming and stuff, but the thought of having an account where I can try to reconnect with my friends and from people at school, it does seem like nice, but I wonder if like they're even using Facebook anymore. I used it quite a bit with them, like when I first graduated, but I just kind of lost interest because I didn't have much going on in my life. So I want to wait until things pick up for me before I create, or even possibly create the account. Because, I don't want my mom to track me down. I just don't want to, I'm fine, texting her over the phone and stuff, but dealing with a parent on, dealing with family members on social media, it doesn't always go down well, so I just don't want to have to worry about that. So yeah, hopefully she doesn't get suspicious, but I decided to not accept her friend request. I didn't even know she was using Facebook anymore. I thought she kind of drifted away from that, but at the same time, she has been kind of on and off about using Facebook. And my dad plans to take me, my dad, and my brother out to go see her. Luckily, we're going to Houston. I actually much rather go to Houston because I love seeing my grandparents on my mom's side of the family. Because the whole dog situation. That's with my grandparents on my dad's side of the family. We all live in the same. Me, my dad, and my brother. We live together, and then my grandparents on his side of the family, you know, I mean, we don't live together. Otherwise, you know, we would always have Zach. But, you know, they do have their own house, but, you know, us five all live in the same town. And then my mom, she lives in Orange Grove, which is my old hometown. And then, you know, my grandparents on her side of the family, they live in Houston. And I love going to Houston. I just get really worried about seeing my mom because trauma is a strong word, but I don't know. I do have unpleasant memories with her, and I don't know. I just worry that she's gonna repeat a lot of her negative actions. You know, she's very high maintenance. She's very intrusive. She can be very inconsiderate, and I just worry about dealing with that crap. And, you know, it's one of the reasons why I don't like vacations. You know, because, you know, dealing with family can be a pain in the ass, especially when you can't get any privacy. Now, last time we stayed in, you know, we stayed at Mimi's house. You know, my maternal, and Grandpa Richard's house, my maternal grandparents. You know, her parents, my mom's side. But my dad is trying to convince us to stay in a hotel. And it is, oh my god. It's so double standard-ish, because he let one of my brother's friends come over and he took over the living room. But no, he forces us to stay in a hotel, even though he knows he damn well knows I like my privacy. Knows like my privacy. It's just so double standard-ish. He doesn't want us to. He wants us to get a hotel, but whenever we're the one having guests, no, my dad will just let them intrude. Oh my god. Ugh. I don't even want to get into it. Oh my god. But yeah, he's double standard-ish when it comes to spending the night. Like, you know, us spending the night at someone else's house versus someone spending the night sorry. You know, us spending the night at someone's house versus people spending the night at our house. He has very double standard beliefs about that. And he knows I like my privacy. I will admit, though, however, I did want to just have a serious talk with my mom. So I wouldn't mind maybe spending, you know, one night with her in a hotel. And then go, you know, maybe for the first night, and then, like, you know, for the second or third or fourth, however long my dad decides to have us stay over in Houston. I can just stay at Mimi's, because, you know, I don't want to sound selfish, but if I'm going to want to have a good talk with my mom, you know, I don't want to have to, you know, I want to have her to myself, you know what I mean? It's going to be hard to do that, like if we're doing it at, you know, when we're at my grandparents' house. Because, you know, she actually stayed with, you know, my dad and my brother the whole time. They were doing stuff that I don't really care about, so I was kind of left out and away. But if like me and my mom, have to like stay in a room together for like a night or so, that will at least be a good time to have a talk with her, because it's hard to do it over the phone. It's best to do it like in person, you know what I mean? So yeah. Screw it, we'll just attack. Okay. But yeah. I cannot sleep if I have to share a room with someone, let alone a bed. And my dad, he just does not understand or care. And it's kind of hypocritical too, because, well, no, actually. Because I was going to say it's hypocritical because, for example, my brother's high maintenance friend came over. And, he would have been by himself anyway when he stayed at the hotel. So I was going to say it would have been hypocritical because when you go to a hotel, you can't get any privacy. But that's only if you have to, like, vacation with people, with certain people. He would have been by himself. It would have probably been better because he wouldn't have any. It would have been better anyway, like in Curtis's situation. Yeah, it costs money, but so does come driving 4 hours here and 4 hours back. Like, Jesus Christ. At least, since he was like alone, he could have just. He would have still been alone in a. It's even better than staying in the living room because you have to deal with people coming out for things. Like, Jesus Christ. Fuck. If I was like staying over at someone else, if I was like visiting someone at their house, like, I would probably go to a hotel to, sleep and, during the night to, or to like sleep, but, because, I would actually prefer that to sleeping in a living room. Yeah, I would have to pay for it, but, at least, I would be by myself, so I would get the room to myself, and I wouldn't have to worry about, invading, not invading people's privacy, but you know what I mean, them, like, disrupting me, because I do not like it when, like, like, if, like, some, like, when, even like, with my dad used to do it, like, more, like, like, before we moved out here, but like, when someone's asleep in a living room, it is annoying, because you feel like you can't do anything, so, yeah, I talked about, that, and why I hate having company, especially like my brother's friend, when if like him, when like particularly like in that case when it was like a friend of my brother's, it made me feel left out. It just disrupted things. But yeah, kind of got on a tangent, but it just it's kind of double standard-ish. If we're staying over at someone else's house, like even when it's a grandparent, my dad's worried about us inconveniencing them. But no, when someone wants to come over here, he doesn't give a shit about my feelings, like, or any feelings. Yeah, it's just double standard-ish. Sorry, I'm probably not even making any sense, but it's just frustrating, talking to my dad about this stuff. In fact, I'm probably gonna make a rant on vacations again pretty soon, and I don't even think I talked about it, in like my Miitopia videos, but like a rant proper where I just talk to the camera about a particular topic. I haven't done that with vacations yet since moving from my old channel to this channel, so yeah, I'm probably gonna if I'm ever feeling up for it, I'm definitely gonna do that pretty soon. But yeah, like I said, I freaking love seeing my grandparents. I have so many good memories of going over to seeing them in Houston and in Columbus, Texas. Because they have a ranch house in Columbus, Texas that I also fucking adored to death going there. But yeah, I am worried about, being forced, sleeping arrangements and, dealing with rigmarole from my mom. And, I will say that her and I do have our good moments too. We goof off sometimes and we act silly, and I am looking, and I do plan to do that too. My dad has been relentlessly teasing me about being a bork, as he calls it, which is his idea of a combination of a bird and a dork. He thinks I'm like a bird and a dork, so he calls me a bork. And I can't wait to get my mom and my grandma on his ass. In a lighthearted way, of course. I'm not really gonna have them get mad at them. But, I'm gonna have them, get them on my side, and we're all gonna just, be 3 against 1. We're all gonna fuck with him and tease him back, so make no mistake, I am looking forward to it too, but, there's just a bunch of mixed feelings. And, if she ever does confront me about, her sending me Facebook requests and me not, accepting them, and, I'll just be like, look, Mom, I only use right now I only use Facebook for, I won't even mention to her about possibly creating, like, a regular Facebook account yet. I'll just be like, look, I just use Facebook too, so I can get assistance with mobile games and stuff, I'll just tell her that. I don't want to bring up possibly, creating a Facebook account, after I get into my programs and whatnot, because then she's going to be expecting, me to, to find me and to, she's going to want to send me a friend request, or expect me to make it, so, yeah. I won't bring that up, but I will bring up, the my actual purpose for using Facebook. And I won't tell her this, but like I mentioned earlier, I don't want to deal with family members on Facebook. In fact, I wish there was a way where I could only, make a Facebook account and, talk to my friends. I can already deal with family members, on the phone and in person. Hopefully I can deal with, I can visit, get to a point where I can visit friends in person too, but you know what I mean. a lot of us, we don't want to have to worry about, family members being up our ass, on their ass, micromanaging. I don't know. I'm trying to find the appropriate term, but, we don't want to always have to deal with family members on Facebook. Because, like I said, my mom has gotten on my ass for petty shit in the past on Facebook, so, yeah. Jesus Christ, man, yeah. And I don't want any repeats of that. So, yeah. But I'll cross that bridge when we come to it, I guess. The other thing, okay, one last thing I want to talk about before I end this off is, another reason why my grandparents are, I'm looking forward to my grandparents coming back. Not just because they're gonna pick up their dog and hopefully I can get a break from him. My dad said that hopefully we should be done for until like around the holidays, but we'll see. But yeah, the other reason I have been looking forward to them coming back is my dad told me that he's gonna try to see if they'll take me to get my Social Security stuff done. My dad, he wanted to do it, but yeah, honestly, guy, yeah. And he was gonna try to do it himself, but honestly, and it's not even like, a personal reason, but my dad, he has a lot of stuff going on. So he's really been struggling to find the time to, take me himself. And then you have my grandparents, they're retired. They have almost all the time in the world to take me. And, I get it. My dad, he originally wanted to take me because he can just directly tell the Social Security people exactly what needs to be told, and I get that. But at the same time, he can also just provide my grandparents with the needed documentations they need to get my Social Security card. I'm running out of breath. Social Security card. He can just give them, what they need, like my ID and my birth certificate, and, tell my grandparents what they need to tell them, or even, tell me what I need to tell them, both of us, or all three of us, because if my grandfather comes. So hopefully I get an update on that when they get back. It'll be in the morning. My dad will be at work, so he's not going to talk to them right away. But hopefully, maybe when he gets back from work, they can maybe text about it, or I don't know, in a couple of days. We'll see. It feels good to finally get my ID. Don't get me wrong. That is a major milestone that we were struggling with. But, on the downside, it still feels like this process is moving at a snail's pace. And obviously, I don't mind my dad taking me. That's not the issue, but if my grandparents, if they have a lot more time than my dad, it's better for them to just take me. That way we don't have to keep waiting weeks or even months for my dad to find the time to take me. He can just set up the appointment, and then, they can take it. And they can, just take me. So yeah, I honestly hope that that's still the plan. Like I said, I wouldn't mind my dad taking me. It's not that, I don't want him to take me, but it's more so the fact that, him struggling to find the time to, make an appointment and take me. I'd rather just my grandparents, do it if it's going to make this go easier and go by easier and faster and smoother, because, this has been a long time coming. We need to get this done. I need my bank account. I need to get into my programs. Oh my god, I just can't wait for it to get all done. And, I don't know if I brought this up in, in the previous parts, but I'm thinking about, I've actually been going back and forth with what debut book I want to do. First, I was thinking between my attraction to fictional characters book and my autism book, which I was leaning towards that one for a while. But now I have a new book in mind, actually, and I'm planning to make it a debut book, and it is a book about my condition, because, I do have neurofibromatosis type 1. That is a condition I am officially diagnosed with. So I think it would be best if I started off with that one. Because, I have talked about, I do suspect I have ADHD and, autism spectrum disorder. But I'm not officially diagnosed with them. I just suspect that I have them. And one of the main reasons why I want to make, or I'll say two of the main reasons why I decided that I think making a book about NF and making it my debut book is the best decision is because, number one, I know I have it. I am officially diagnosed with it. So, and that will make it a lot easier to write. Number two, my parents know that I have it. I don't think, because, that's one of the main purposes of writing these books is, I want to eventually pass them down to my parents so they can get a better understanding of me. Ooh, alright. Alright, I'm not gonna go on any more battles. I just kind of will do some casual stuff. But yeah, and okay, I want, like I said, I want my, one of the reasons reason number two is why I'm doing this is because I want my parents to get a better understanding of me. And, they're not sure if I have autism or ADHD, especially my dad. My mom, on the other hand, she used to doubt me having ADHD, and so did I, but I talked about it with her a couple years ago, and, she's not as doubtful about it anymore. My dad, though, he's very doubtful of me having autism and ADHD, but he knows I have neurofibromatosis, so I think that book will be a good starting point, because it is, it is a condition that, they all know I have, all three of us know that I have. And also, there's actually a third reason, too. It's actually a risk factor of autism and ADHD, and I feel like a lot of my autism and ADHD symptoms can come from NF, and I can just talk about those in my book, because when I do that book, I'm gonna, I want to, I'm gonna have knowledge and stuff, but I'm actually gonna try to make it really focus on my personal experiences with the condition, because that's important when you're writing nonfiction about certain topics. General knowledge is definitely good, but it's also good to give your point of view, like your own experience. It creates a more personal connection with your readers. So yeah, I think that will be a good starting point. I do eventually want to do a book or books about autism and slash, whether it's a book or separate books about autism and ADHD. But for now, I think starting with a book about neurofibromatosis, considering it's something I know I have and my parents know that I have, I think that is going to be my best starting point and debut book. So yeah. Anyway, I think I'm going to end it off right here, guys. It was nice talking to you guys about this, and I'm looking forward to premiering this when Green Ethan can do a premiere again. So I will see you guys later. Goodbye.